Hello, apologies for the sound on this video. I'm just using my mobile phone and I'm printing out my 756,000 squirt V2 ducts because I keep cocking up the print, but we'll just make do. When I did my giveaway video the other day and I mentioned some of the stuff that was coming up for review, I forgot this guy, which is a little ESC by Airbot, and this is the Airbot Furling Airport 50 amp blheli-s ESC, and this was something I requested simply because if it works it will be my favourite ESC, and as you can see it comes with some gummies and the usual cable, but if we have a closer look you can see why I liked it. Right, so as I said, this is the Airbot Airport 50 amp Furling ESC, blheli-32, and it has telemetry, and as you can see it claims metal Vtxs, but I'm wondering, it's very difficult to see whether they're just metal topped, because they look almost as if aluminium has been stuck over the top of them, although I could be wrong. But as I said, the reason why I was really interested in this is because of this. The number of times when you're building and your components just sort of are just marginally too tight because you've got a FET or some sort of cable or component that's poking out the bottom, and it makes it really easy. And if I lived in America, I'd probably use the Pyroflip F4 board for most of my builds because of its perfectly flat back. So when I saw this, I was really excited about it because it is super thin. I mean, if we compare it to that Flywoo ESC I spoke about the other day, which feels really heavy and quality, you can see the difference. I mean, in terms of the ESC, the Airbot one is pretty much half as deep. Massive difference. So if you're looking to build a tight stack, or you're building, a smooth operator or one of the Hyperlaws or something like that, it's a super thin ESC. The bit that surprises me is how light it feels, and I'm curious, this doesn't really mean anything. If we just stick it on a scale, this is sort of one extreme, so we've got this big chunky heatsink which is obviously adding weight, but that sort of is a bit of a security blanket. If you were running a really high powered setup and you're concerned about heat, clearly this is the way to go. So this isn't this is better than this, it's just a different. So we can see the Flywoo weighs 18.7 grams and it feels quality and chunky. Look at that, 9.6 grams. So pretty much half the weight, which is incredible. Now, this guy is rated for 50 amps and 55 amp burst. But I think it isn't. Experience tells me if you're running a quality ESC and you're the likes of Acorn or someone like that who makes really good stuff, you don't have a burst current, a burst amperage that's within 5 amps of your continuous. So Airbot might say this is 50 amp with a 55 amp burst. I suspect it's probably not. It's probably more like 40 amp with a 55 amp burst. But regardless, either of those figures is more than sufficient for the average pilot. There aren't many quads out there that are going to pull anywhere close to 200 amps, even at full bore for a few seconds. So I'm willing to take that gamble. And as I said, if this holds up, this will be my go-to ESC. And it also comes with, which I've annoyingly just lost, the rubber grommets. So you can see the holes are slightly enlarged So if you use those rubber grommets, it will obviously lift it slightly off the bike. But if I was mounting this, all I'd be doing is running a couple of strips of insulation tape, two that way, just to protect the bottom, where you've got these exposed parts, and I'd just be direct mounting it, possibly with the grommets cut down, just to give it a little bit of vibration so the components don't shake themselves loose. Yeah, so I really like it. I hope it turns out to be a good quality item. The previous Furling ESC the blheli-32 ESC has been bulletproof with zero noise. I hope this is the same, although we shall have to wait and see. Yeah, really impressed with that. So we've got current sensors, got telemetry, it's got everything that you need, and comes in a super slim stack. So as and when I put this in something, I'll update this video and let everybody know, and let's hope this is one of the better Airbot ESCs. The recent stuff has been really good, so I hope they haven't gone back to their flaky ways, but this is, yeah, this will be my favourite ESC. Second part of this video is just going to be a little bit of a waffle, and I haven't done one of these for a bit, so I thought it'd be a good time to sort of share some things, or maybe not share some things, but qualify some things. If you followed the channel for a long time, you'll know that I've always flown Betaflight. For the, I don't know, coming up to 3 years that I've been flying. And Betaflight's been good for me. As a newcomer to the hobby, when you're first starting, there's tons of videos on Betaflight. Bardwell has a million videos on setting it up, as do a million other people. So even though Betaflight, the interface is pretty complicated and there's lots of bits and bobs to deal with, you sort of get into the habit really quickly of finding your own setup and sort of transplanting that setup to any future quads that you build. And what Betaflight does is it teaches you a number of things. It teaches you basically how to tune, because the majority of versions of Betaflight are flown pretty rubbish out of the box, and the reason for that is Betaflight is designed to be able to fly whatever you throw at it, whether it be a hexacopter or a 2-inch quad or a 5-inch quad. So it's not sort of really set up in any particularly great way for, you know, the average 5-inch race quad or freestyle quad that we might fly. But what it does do is give you tons of features. So if you want return home on GPS and all those things, you'll find those within Betaflight. The problem with it is it's sort of almost, I suppose, crumbling under its own complexity, or the number of ideas that are within it. And Betaflight 4 is, I think, a pretty classic example. And I don't want this to be about bashing Betaflight, because that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to sort of come on to something. But Betaflight 4, if you go on the Facebook page and stuff like that, all you'll hear is them talking about blackboxing, blackboxing, blackboxing. And the majority of people, myself included, don't blackbox. And if I was going to blackbox, it would only be to solve a particular issue that my own knowledge couldn't solve. You know, if I had a vibration or something like that that I couldn't get rid of. And up until now, I've never had one of those problems. I've always been relatively satisfied about the tune that I've ended up with, or not, as the case may be. And this is kind of aimed for new pilots, really. This sort of imaginary perfect tune doesn't exist. If you watch Bardwell's videos, you will learn what P does and what I does and what D does, and all that information is really, really useful. But what you won't learn and what you can't learn without tons of stick time is what works for you. And what you tend to find, myself included, when you're starting this hobby, is you'll start off with quad A, and a year in you'll have built another 6 or 12 quads. You'll have tried a million different combinations, and somewhere along that journey, and for me it was maybe, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years in, you'll come across the sort of quad that you keep coming back to. And for me, that's the sort of heavier 5-inch freestyle quads. For some people it might be lightweight race quads or 3-inch quads, whatever floats your boat. There's no right or wrong answer here. What you end up with is something that you will constantly try and hone and improve upon. So I didn't start out sort of wanting to fly in any particular way. I just flew, and gradually over time I ended up being a relatively smooth pilot. If you watch my videos, you know, unless it's one of those videos where I'm in tight trees in a new spot and I'm basically reacting to everything, the majority of my videos will show sort of smooth flowing freestyle, and that's just kind of where I ended up with. For no particular reason, that's just, you know, that sort of flying makes me relaxed, it makes me happy, it removes tension that I get in every day-to-day life, and it's just what I love. You know, if you want to be poncy about it, I suppose it's like a surfer talking about the waves, or, you know, those sort of things. It's just what makes me tick. And if you speak to someone else, they might love the snappy, aggressive style, or they might love racing. You will just, over time, naturally fall into your own sort of niche, if you will. And the majority of things on this channel are me basically refining that. So when I review a new frame, it tends to be for a particular reason. The hyperlow frames I love, and I review simply because I like hyperlow. But within that, you'll see me experimenting with lighter freestyle frames, with heavier freestyle frames, with 2207 motors, with 2306 motors, with different setups, even when I was using Betaflight. Essentially all of those quads are building my own experience. They're teaching me different things. They're teaching me about how a lighter quad reacts to a heavier quad, how much P I need to run on a lighter quad versus a heavier quad, you know, the fact that I'll need to run higher P if I'm carrying a GoPro. Loads of millions of different things you will learn over the course of your flying, and Betaflight will be perfect for learning all of those things. Where it's not so perfect is when, in my opinion, is the whole black box thing. Because if you black box, and this is just my opinion, so, you know, a million people will disagree, but this is just my view. If you black box, and you black box to the nth degree to get the perfect P and the perfect I and the perfect filters, to get all those, get rid of all that noise, the question that sort of always springs to mind in the back of my head is, what do you end up with? Because when I tune, if you look at one of Bardwell's videos, and you'll see him doing snap rolls to see if he gets any bounce back, and he'll punch out and then back off the throttle immediately to see if his nose dips down, and he's kind of doing those to explain to people when he changes I and P what he's looking for. But you'll find that a lot of pilots won't tune that way, and I'm one of them. I don't really care if my quad dips down if I punch and then back off the throttle completely. I don't really care if my quad doesn't stop exactly dead on at the end of a snap roll, and it maybe drifts a little bit or something like that. What I care about is how it feels, because in real life, being the pilot that I am, I never punch up 2 miles and then completely kill the throttle. I'll punch up, I'll roll over, maybe I'll do an inverted yaw spin, or I'll flip and then I'll slow off the edge because I think it makes for a cleaner, nicer line. And if you black box, I suppose my question to those who black box is, how do you sort of find that flavour? And recently I started flying the KISS stuff. I tried the KISS V2 on the SX 218, and I was amazed how that quad flew out of the box, but I had a few reservations, one of which is that it felt a little bit robotic. Now, if I'd have followed those classic lines in terms of tuning and done the snap roll and done the whole nodding dog routine, what I'd have found, and what I could tell straight away, is that the quad, in technical terms, was as perfect as any quad I've ever flown. It was perfect, but it didn't feel right for me. I don't like a perfectly snap at the end of my rolls. I don't like a perfectly stiff quadcopter. What I like is when I roll, I want the quadcopter to naturally move. I want it to sort of to slowly finish its lines, and by backing off some of the P and some of the I within KISS, I found that in a sense I'm almost detuning the quadcopter. I'm making the quadcopter fly classically worse, but I'm giving myself the feel and the flavour, if you will, for my style of flying. And another person might pick up that same KISS and the same setup and love the PIDs that they started off with. And mine weren't the default PIDs, they were some PIDs that I borrowed from my friend Graham, who is in Norfolk FPV, and he's flown KISS for a long time. And all I did is sort of quickly calculated that my quad was probably going to be 50-70 grams lighter than his, so maybe I would need a little bit less P and I, little bit less D, because mine was a brand new clean setup. So I just sort of backed off of his PID, and that was what I set off with. And as I said, the quad was perfect. So when you see these videos of people doing the perfect tune, etc., at the back of your mind, you've really got to ask, or for that matter, black boxing, at the back of your mind, you've really got to ask what you're trying to achieve. If you're a smooth flowing pilot, you will want a quad that's pretty light in the air. You'll want a quad that's light on eye gain, so it's not too stiff. You'll want a quad that's not massively P driven, that's quite sort of neutral in the air. You won't want one that feels as stiff as a plank and you know, holds its line perfectly, because all those sort of little drifty motions add, in my view, to the feel. And listen, I'm not a world-class pilot, but I'm just sort of trying to explain how I look at it. And vice versa, you know, if you get somebody like, I don't know, Mr. Steele or one of the technical pilots, they will be looking for all those things because they love doing those little snap rolls and things like that. So it really depends on what kind of what side of the fence you're on. But this is a very long introduction to, I suppose, a topic. What I'm trying to say is everything that I'm doing is really trying to define, trying to refine my own flight style. And that doesn't mean it's the right way for anybody else to start off, or the right way, or the best way, or anything like that. A set of motors that I think are brilliant, a more aggressive, snappier pilot might not like, because maybe the throttle curve is too smooth, or maybe they're not rapid attack enough. You know, the Vtxs Freestyle V2, which I said is a little bit too rapid attack for me. It's a little bit wants to roll and a little bit twitchier for me in the air. Other pilots might absolutely love that. So when you watch one of the videos, you've got to sort of take into account what you're looking for. And if you're a new pilot, and this is the crux of this video, if you're a new pilot, none of this really matters a jot. One jot. It doesn't matter what motors you've got, it doesn't matter what frame you've got, it doesn't matter what flight control you've got, it doesn't matter what PID you're using, none of it matters. The only thing that matters is you've got a quad which is reliable, and you've got enough money left over, having built it, to cope with repairs and as many batteries as you humanly can. So the purpose of this video is really just to give you an idea of, if I started flying today and with everything I knew and all the mistakes that I make day in day out, what would I do? This is how I would recommend somebody starts. So if we start with frames, I think whether you want to be a racer, whether you want to be a freestyle pilot, whether you want to do smooth, whether you want to do rapid attack, I think a good starting place for anybody is a typical 5-inch freestyle quad. And the reason for that is weight. Weight on a quad, especially with today's powerful motors, will give you throttle resolution. And throttle resolution, as a new pilot, in fact any pilot, will give you confidence, because you won't be sort of feeling nervous on the throttle. You won't feel like the quad's running away from you. You feel like the quad is very centered. Whereas if you start off with a very lightweight quad, it will feel skittish. You'll always feel like you're holding yourself back unless you mess around with throttle curves and stuff like that, which for new pilots is, you know, it's a little bit too advanced. So I would say to anybody, if you want to start flying, don't buy, excuse me, you know, we can piss around with these things for ever and a day, whoops and that sort of stuff, you know. And if someone says to me, I want to buy a whoop to get into flying, you know, knock yourself out. But the other side of me says, if you've got a limited budget, this sort of stuff won't last you very long. You'll end up repairing it all the time, and more importantly, within a few months you'll want something bigger. So I would advise somebody on a limited budget, this is, to avoid this sort of thing, and this frankly is crap. And as I said, I would look at a 5-inch frame. Now when it comes to 5-inch frames, you'll have heard me piping on about hyper-low a lot. But if I was talking to someone who has a limited budget, there are a ton of frames out there that I would recommend to people, cheap frames. And the one that springs immediately to mind is the TBS Source 1. And the reason for that is it's a relatively sort of classic freestyle frame. It's clearly ripped off from the Alien, but you know, the majority of frames are. But more importantly, it's about 25 quid, which is half or a third of the price as you'll pay for a name frame from another company. Now we could argue that, you know, maybe hyper-low carbon is better than TBS carbon, and frankly, who knows? I don't know. But what we can't argue about is if you're a new pilot coming in with all the setup costs of batteries and all the rest of it, if you can get a frame for 25 quid and it's a decent frame, do it. The other perk about the TBS Source 1 frame is because it's open source, there are a ton of mods for it. So if you want, you know, an action cam mount for a Runcam 3 or a GoPro Session or a Hero or whatever you want, somebody will have designed a 3D print for it, and it's very easy these days to go and ask your local shop to print you one out, even if you don't have a 3D printer like this one. So I used to use multi-rotor spares, I think they're called in the UK, to do my 3D printing. And they also have lots of things like antenna mounts and so all sorts of 3D bits and bobs that you can put on, and that makes the frame really easy to work on, because whatever design whatever antenna you're using, somebody out there will have made a good mount for it. So that's 25 quid on a frame. You could equally go on to Banggood, like we all did, or the majority of us did when we started, and take a punt on one of their 25 or 30 quid frames, and some of those frames will be really good, and others will be absolutely shit, and you're not really going to know until you spend your money. And I used to have a lot of fun actually buying different frames from Banggood, seeing them as pretty disposable, and then, you know, wrecking them and, you know, building a new quad. But if we want to do this sensibly, if you are going to shop on Banggood, the number one thing you want to look out for if you're going to buy a cheap frame from Banggood is, do they sell spare parts? Because the majority of those frames, even frames that have replaceable arms, they don't sell the replaceable arms, so it's pointless doing it. So I would, as I said, go for the TBS Source 1. In terms of ESCs and flight controllers, all you really need is something that's relatively cheap and relatively reliable. One flight controller is really the same as another flight controller, and if we're staying with Betaflight because it's got lots of choices and it's cheap, and you know, you can get all-in-one boards, or you can get boards for separate ESCs, whatever you want, there'll be a board out there. If we're sticking with Betaflight, off the top of my head, you can spend tons of money on an ESC. You can spend 50 quid getting the super thin ESC that we spoke about here, or you can save yourself some money and spend that money on the things that matter, batteries, etc. So a couple of ESCs that I found to be pretty reliable. The Racerstar blheli-s, so it's not the BL32, but don't worry about that. The Racerstar blheli-s 35amp ESC I found to be really reliable, and it's usually about 25 quid. The other one which comes in a stack is the Diatone Mamba, which I think is 40 amp and is good for 6S, and it comes with an F4 flight controller as well. That stack I think retails for about 45 quid, possibly 50 quid for both of those boards, so it's really cheap. As I said, the Racerstar 35amp ESC retails for about 27 quid, and in terms of flight controllers, just get whatever flight controller you want. Now both of those ESCs are 4-in-1 ESCs, and I've mentioned both of those because the majority of people will build with 4-in-1 ESCs. However, if you can, and I appreciate not everybody will want to do this, I would advise and recommend people to use separate ESCs. And the reason for that is there are tons of cheap, really good value, really sturdy separate ESCs. And if you're building your first quad or you're building your third quad and you don't want to ride the hype train, you're not really going to notice the difference in the air between an ESC on your arm and an ESC that's a 4-in-1. The differences are minimal. And as I said, if you're using a modern motor, the amount of power that is on offer sort of outweighs any downsides. The benefits of separate ESCs are, you can buy a Spedix, an old Spedix 30-amp ESC for about £7, a single ESC for £7. So you're going to spend 28 quid on 4 ESCs. Those Spedix ESCs are bulletproof. I've never in my entire flying time broken one. You don't need the fancy later versions. In fact, I think the blheli-32 versions are worse than the earlier D-Shot 600 versions. I think they suffer from more noise. So if you go to your local hobby shop, Spedix ESC 30-amp, you can get them in the UK from most places. Quadcopters do them, Unplanned do them, but they call them Chaos ESCs. Exactly the same thing, just with different branding, and those ESCs will do you well. They're not blheli-32, but blheli-32 is 9 parts marketing and 1 part performance, and that performance part is so slight that the majority of people will not notice the difference. And certainly as a first-time flyer or somebody who's in the first year of flying, it shouldn't be your priority. Priority should be avoid the hype, get the label kit. As I said, I personally would choose separate ESCs, because if you burn an ESC or you drop a blob of solder on one when you're soldering, it's much nicer to spend 7 or 8 quid replacing one than it is to spend 30 or 40 quid replacing a 4-in-1 ESC, even if it's a cheap one. So as I said, Racerstar one is a decent cheap ESC. Mamba stack is a decent ESC. I haven't blown one. The flight control is pretty basic. It doesn't have a huge amount of UARTs, but we're not talking about having a million UARTs here. We're talking about a quad that you can attach a receiver, and that's pretty much the end of it. We're not looking at GPS or any of those things, so we only need it to be simple. And the difference in flight between an F4 flight controller and an F7 flight controller is nothing. It doesn't exist. All that an F7 flight controller will do is give you a little bit more peace of mind going into the future. However, if you're building your first quad or your third quad, chances are by the time that tech is obsolete, you'll have built another 3 or 4 by then anyway, because that's the way it goes. So that's the ESCs done out of the way. Motors, I think we're kind of spoiled for choice for motors. I've reviewed a number of motors recently, and I like them all, and none of them are bad. I don't think it's really possible to buy a bad motor if you spend sort of 12, 14 quid upwards. If you want to spend less than that, there are a couple that spring to mind. Unplanned have just released their own motor, which I think is based on that DYS, can't remember the name of it, Sunfly or something like that. But there are a ton of cheap motors. If it was me, I would probably look at a number of different options. I'd look at the RCX motors, because RCX are, and have been for a long time, the sort of secret weapon of the budget conscious flyer. I used RCX motors for a long time, 2206s they were back then, and I also used the 1407s, and to date I've never had any issues with them. You can buy, I think the cheap versions are the LS, I might be wrong about that, but if you go on to my RC Mart, basically RCX motors, they do them in 2207s I think these days, and you want about 2400 kV, 2500 kV, and if you choose the no warranty option, they're, I don't know, $9, $8, $10, something like that, and you're probably not going to find a cheaper motor, a better quality cheaper motor. And at that sort of price, buy 5 instead of 4, and then if you're really unlucky or you bust one, you've got a spare. Failing that, there are a whole host of motors from iFlight. Rcinpower, the 2306 is probably my favourite overall motor, the GTS2, and that can be had for about 15 quid a motor, so not hugely above a budget motor. But whether you spend 15 quid on a motor or you spend 7 quid on a motor, that motor will have more than sufficient power for anybody. Even after flying, you know, nearly 3 years, I still can't fly a quad through a dense forest at full bore. I just can't. I don't have the skill to do that. So, you know, wanting more power is probably the last thing that you want to be looking at. What you want is more control. And flipping back to the heavier quad, a heavier quad will give you more control, more peace of mind. So even going back 2 or 3 years ago, we were using 2205s as motors. My first motors were, I don't know, I think they might have been Racerstar 2205s at the time, running 4S. I thought they were the fastest things the world's ever seen. 3 years later, they probably throw out half the power of the motors I'm using right now. But the point of the matter is that I've got a lot more experience to deal with that. And as a new pilot, you won't have. There's no records or competitions for flying 100 feet above a football field at a 50-degree camber angle and screwing your motors. You know, show me you doing that at, you know, 6 inches off the ground through trees, and you know that'll be something worth shouting about. And you won't need a super powered motor to do that. So whether you choose what size of motor you choose, knock yourself out. My preferred flavour of motor has always been 2306 because I think it gives a nice balance of between bottom end throttle resolution, and it fades off nicely at the top end, which I quite like. But equally, my favourite quad at the moment is running 2207s, and you know, doesn't bother me a jot. So whether you go for 2306 or 2207 or even 2206, it doesn't matter. All that matters is you buy a relatively quality motor from RCX or you know, one of the iFlight or somebody like that that's going to give you a relatively trouble-free life. And if you bust it, then sell a V. Stuff happens. I've only really sort of destroyed maybe 3 motors in my time flying in the worst possible crashes, so you don't bust them that often. So I wouldn't bother with the whole silly rotor wire warranty motor, which is frankly a crap motor at a high price. In terms of other stuff, I think one of the most important areas of your quad should be the camera, and that's the area that, you know, you want to be spending some money. I think the CMOS cameras are the way to go right now, but equally there are other people out there who will disagree. My own favourite camera for general day-to-day flying is the Foxeer Predator and the V3. I know they've released a V4, but if you see the V3 or even the V2 on offer, knock yourself out. They're great cameras. I'm also enjoying actually the Caddx Rattel 2.1mm lens, which seems very, very good. A little bit overexposed in bright sunshine, a little bit too contrasty possibly for me, but it's amazing flipping between light and dark areas. But Caddx QC is a little bit and even on my one I turn it on sometimes and I get a black screen. I've checked my grounds etc a million times. I think it's a fault with the camera. So Caddx cameras are cheap, but they're also potentially a little bit shit, even though the performance is good. But any Runcam Swift or Foxeer RO etc will get you in the air. It's just, if you can spend the extra 5 quid and get a Predator or something like that, possibly an Eagle, any of those sorts of cameras. Vtxs, obviously a video transmitter, is another area where you can spend as much as you like. Since I moved to 6S, I tend to use the TBS ones, and that's really only because a lot of my cheaper Vtxs basically relied on direct battery voltage, and they were only sort of rated maybe to 23-24 volts, and they didn't last a huge amount of time before I started having issues with them running 6S. But if you're a new pilot and you need to buy yourself as many batteries as possible, just start on 4S. The benefits of 6S in terms of consistency are definitely there, but if you can buy a 4S pack on offer for 11 quid and the same milliamp hour 6S pack is double the price, you know, spend your money wisely and buy 4S. You know, it's not going to stop, it's not going to impair you in any way, and it just frees up your money to spend it elsewhere. So Vtx wise, I've had pretty decent luck in the past with the cheap AKK Vtxs. The eachine TX805, which is made by AKK, is also an OK Vtx. The Foxeer ones aren't bad either. The was it TX Clear TX2? They're not bad. None of them are as good consistently as the TBS Unify, and I say consistently because I've had a couple of Unifies that have given me nothing but problems, but all the rest have been great. But if I was buying one today in the UK, I'd probably be looking at Unmanned Chaos Vtx, which is a rebrand of the Race Day Quads Vtx. Anything that will run up to, you know, 500, 600, 800 milliwatts will be absolutely fine. You don't need to go and spend 40 quid on the latest TBS or whatever you might need. Basically all this is about, if you've got the money to do that, then knock yourself out, you won't regret it. But I suppose the point of this overall video is you need to sort of budget on your quad parts to save money and to allow you to buy the thing that will really improve your flying, and that is batteries. You know, if you've got 15 batteries, you'll get a lot more stick time than the guy who's got a really nice quad but it's only got 5 batteries. And flipping back to the frames, etc., you'll find a lot of people will go, oh, I bought an Armaton frame for 100 quid, comes with a lifetime warranty. So what? Spend 25 quid on the TBS frame, replace a couple of arms if you're unlucky. In a year's time or 6 months' time, when you build your second quad or your third quad or your fourth quad, there'll be a much better frame out there than whatever the current flavour of the month is anyway. So I think I've covered most things. It's the same with props. My favourite props at the moment are the Vtxs S3, much to my disappointment because I hate the colour scheme and I'm not particularly a fan of that company. But again, if you're watching this video and someone who wants to know stuff, you don't really need to spend a ton of money on HQ props. You know, the Gap RC 504 rolls, or I think you can get 10 sets for a £5. They're okay props. Everything that you see and everything, actually let's rephrase this. The most important thing in flying FPV or these if you're a pincher. If you put a great pilot and gave him, you know, a bang good Martian quad with Racerstar motors on, he would still outfly me, you know, 10 to 1 with my flashy latest motors and whatever else I'm using, because this is the thing that really matters. And flipping back to tuning, flying for so long, they naturally fly around the issues that a new pilot will have. So when you hear someone saying there's no prop wash, there's always bloody prop wash if you look for it. But the majority of pilots will naturally know to fly around it. They won't do it intentionally, they'll just naturally know that you don't land flat into your prop wash. You can sort of slide out of it side to side or front, or you can get on throttle earlier and slow that motion down. You can do tons of things to avoid it, and these are all things that we do naturally and we pick up naturally. And you could almost learn more from a crap flying quad than you can do from a really good one. And a crap flying quad will probably teach you how to fly really smoothly and accurately, because if you don't, you'll end up with a ton of prop wash ruining you know, your video or whatever you do. So that's kind of it for this video. I know it's sort of a bit of a waffly video. I'm going to leave links to as much of this stuff as I can in the description. They're not going to be affiliate links other than the ESC, which needs to be an affiliate link so Banggood can see that I've made this video. So this will be an affiliate link. All the other stuff I've talked about is not going to be an affiliate link, because I don't really care whether you buy any of this stuff or not. It doesn't really matter to me one iota. I just wanted to, on the back of starting to use more and more expensive stuff, I just really wanted to qualify why I'm doing that. You know, I'm using KISS to see if I can take my own flying one step further while avoiding a lot of the overly complicated features that I feel like Betaflight 4 currently has. And because Betaflight is demanding more and more of people to black box, I'm not interested in that. I love to fly, I love to build. I've got better things to do than look at a computer at my, you know, noise on my gyro. I really don't care. And if I did, and if I ended up with the perfect tune, it wouldn't be the perfect tune for me anyway. I can only sort of get that with my fingers. So don't think, if you watch any of my videos, that you need to run KISS V2 and whatever the latest frame is or whatever the latest motors are. You don't need to do any of that, and I'd advise you not to do that unless you know you're an experienced pilot and you know what you're looking for, and what I say sort of echoes your own feelings. So yeah, avoid the hype train. Don't buy the latest and greatest. Funnily, actually, I was due to, excuse me, I'm going to smoke. I was due to review the Sky O2X, which should have arrived by now, and I got an email from Banggood the other day saying, oh, there's been a cock-up, and they weren't sent. And when they originally approached me to review some stuff, there's some sort of big sale going on in July. They sent me a list of stuff and asked me if I'd like to review any of it. And there was various stuff on there. Foxeer box, the Armway V1S are they? And the Sky Zones were the ones that I kind of thought, well, I'll do a video on that, and then, as I said before, I'll give it to one of the other lads or sell it cheap. So I agreed to review it. The other day, they contacted me to say there's been a mess up, and they hadn't been sent, and I wouldn't be receiving them. And I'm getting the feeling that my contact at Banggood is a bit stressed about this. I don't know whether they're on some sort of commission for how many videos they do over July, or I don't really know what's going on. But she said, let me know if there's anything else that we can send for you to review. So last night I kind of poured over Banggood thinking, you know, what can I review? Because I'm kind of selective, I don't want to review any old stuff. And I ended up picking a few things. One of them is the rapid fire module, and I appreciate that every man and his dog has reviewed the rapid fire module, but I haven't, and I've never been that interested in it. A lot of my mates use rapid fire, they swear by it, but the cynic in me kind of says, how good can it be? You know, is it really going to make a difference to my flying? You know, I'm a sort of average pilot. Because I do freestyle, because I'm flying around trees, you know, I crash a bit. I'm never really going to be flying massively farther than I'm happy to walk. And my current, you know, Sky Zone 03 or the Furious module on my HDOs, you know, does me absolutely fine. But I kind of thought maybe that's the right mentality to go into a review like this. So I've asked them for that, which they're sending me. And I kind of thought it might make an interesting video from my point of view as to whether, you know, we know that the rapid fire is, you know, the best receiver, but does it really matter? Do we really need the best receiver? So that's what my video will be about. I've also got, I always say QAV, but the QAV, the Lumineer QAV, what's it called? QAV 2, QAV 2, which appeared on Banggood. Banggood is selling a lot of Lumineer stuff at the moment, and I kind of thought, well, I'll review a frame. I'm sort of comfortable with those, so I've got that coming up. And at the same time, they're sending me the Flight One, what's it called? The Flight One F4 board, the 30.5mm version. And I've never flown Flight One before, and it sort of was on my to-do list. So while I was looking for things to review, I thought, oh, I'll ask for that. So they're sending me that as well, and that along with KISS will be you know, me sort of exploring new things and finding out, you know, is Flight 1, you know, going to shape my world a little bit in the way that KISS did, or is it going to be just another sort of hype train that, you know, is not really going to change anything at all. Speaking about KISS, actually, the 5-inch KISS I was blown away by. The 6-inch I'm not. It doesn't feel to me any better than in fact it feels worse than the 6-inch that I've flown on Betaflight, my smooth operator 6-inch, and that's not my build. The build is a quality build, and it's all there, but it doesn't have any of the finesse that I found on the 5-inch, and I suspect that's probably because it's not there. I'm guessing KISS works brilliantly on the average 5-inch freestyle frame, but you need a lot more work, similar to Betaflight, to get it flying on a bigger 6-inch quad or 7-inch quad. So I sort of need to explore a little bit like that. The one perk of KISS, and I haven't explored this yet, there's a ton of pre-populated pilots, PIDs on there, so you know, all your top pilots who fly KISS, you can choose to use their PIDs, which I wouldn't recommend anybody do, but it's there. But it might be worthwhile in this case me looking to see if Canasti or somebody like that who flies 6-inch has got any KISS PIDs. Yeah, just to sort of see if I can bring it alive, because right now I'm thinking that I'd rather put that KISS V2 in a 5-inch quad and run Betaflight on the 6-inch. So yeah, this has been a pretty long, unfocused or waffly video, probably the most unfocused waffly video I've ever done, but I kind of just wanted, if there's anybody out there who's sort of looking at this and thinking, oh, I need to get this latest frame and these latest motors and KISS V2 and all the rest of it, you don't have to do any of that. And unless you've been flying well over a year, none of this stuff will have the slightest bearing on your ability to fly your quadcopter. Really what we're looking at is, you know, somebody with similar experience to me, just really, yeah, I'm just trying to sort of find my perfect setup. I suppose that's the goal for all of us, and I think by making stumbles along the way, by having, you know, one of your quads fly really badly, you'll learn a lot more than you will do if you plug in KISS V2 on a 5-inch reverb or something like that and it flies really, really well. You know, there's an argument out there to say that that's a great thing, but I think one of the things about this hobby is learning. You know, and we never stop learning in this hobby. You know, I've said it before, I don't know everything. I'm learning new stuff every day, and that's the bit that sort of excites me. This bloody printer is a learning experience that I can't quite get my head around. I'm not sure I have enough patience to spend 10 hours printing something to realise it's crap, but yeah, and it's the same with quads. So that is it from me. Thanks to anybody who's made it to the end of this video. As I said, I've got that stuff to review. I'm hoping this Airbot ESC will be reliable, because if it is, yeah, it's a really cracking ESC for those builds that are low profile or pretty tight, which tends to be the stuff that I like. Cheers guys, thanks, bye bye.